Most men today are losing a battle they don't even know they're fighting. They wake up, reach for their phone, and before the day even begins, their mind is already compromised. And the worst part? They think this is normal. But over 2,000 years ago, there was a civilization that understood something about desire that the modern world has completely forgotten. A civilization that didn't just talk about discipline. They built it into their bones, into their blood, into every waking moment of their lives. The Spartans. And what they discovered about lust, about desire, about the war happening inside every man's mind, it wasn't just philosophy. It was a system. A brutal, effective, ancient system that produced some of the most mentally unbreakable warriors the world has ever seen. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will never look at self-control the same way again. Welcome back to Epoch Stories, where we dig into history not as a school subject, but as a living, breathing guide to understanding the world and ourselves. If you're new here, welcome to the family. This channel is where the past comes alive, and trust me, once you go through what we cover today, you'll want to stick around. Now, before we get into the Spartan method itself, we need to understand something first. Sparta was not a normal civilization. While other Greek city-states were building grand theaters and writing poetry, Sparta was doing something entirely different. They were engineering human beings. From birth, every single Spartan was shaped, tested, and forged into something the world had never seen before. And at the center of all of it was one obsession: control. Not just control over enemies on the battlefield, but control over the most dangerous enemy of all, the one that lives inside you. Now here's what most people get wrong about the Spartans. They think Spartan discipline was about punishment, about pain, about suffering for suffering's sake. But that's not the truth. The Spartans understood something that modern psychology is only now beginning to confirm. That desire, left unchecked, doesn't just weaken the body. It clouds the mind. It destroys focus. It makes a man predictable, manipulable, and ultimately powerless. And in a world where your survival depended on the man standing beside you, a weak mind was a death sentence. So they built a system. And it started earlier than you'd ever imagine. At age 7, Spartan boys were taken from their families. Not as punishment, as design. The Spartans believed that comfort was the enemy of greatness. That a boy raised in luxury would become a man controlled by luxury. So they removed it entirely. These boys entered a training program called the Agoge. And the Agoge was not a military school in the way we imagine it today. It was a complete psychological and physical reconstruction of what it meant to be a human being. They slept on reeds they cut themselves from the river. They were given barely enough food to survive. Not because the Spartans were cruel, but because they were teaching the body a lesson it would never forget. That discomfort is survivable. That hunger is not the end. That desire does not have to control you. And here's where it gets fascinating. When those boys grew into young men and desire began to rise the way it does for every young man, the Spartans didn't pretend it didn't exist. They didn't lecture them about morality. They didn't shame them. Instead, they redirected. The Agoge kept these young men in a constant state of productive exhaustion. Training, competing, hunting, working. Not as distraction, but as transformation. The Spartans believed that idle time was the birthplace of weakness. That lust, in its most destructive form, only gains power when a man has nothing worthy to give his energy to. Think about that for a moment. When was the last time you fell into a pattern you weren't proud of? Was it during a busy, purposeful season of your life? Or was it during a season of boredom and emptiness? The Spartans already knew the answer, thousands of years before you were born. But the method didn't stop there. Because redirecting energy was only the first layer. The deeper layer was something far more powerful. Identity. Every young Spartan was taught, from the earliest age, that he was not just a person. He was a guardian, a protector, a link in a chain that stretched back generations and would continue long after he was gone. His body did not belong to his desires. His body belonged to Sparta. Now, before you think this sounds oppressive, hear me out. Because what this created was something extraordinary. When a man sees himself as something greater than his impulses lose their grip. When you know who you are at your deepest level, the things that once tempted you begin to feel small, beneath you. Not because you're fighting them with willpower, but because they simply no longer match who you believe yourself to be. This is what modern self-help books sell you in 500 pages. The Spartans lived it before the concept of a book even existed. And if you're finding value in this right now, do me a quick favor. Hit the like button, drop a comment telling me what part of this is hitting hardest for you. And if you haven't subscribed yet, join the Epic Stories family. We dig into history like this every week, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. Now back to Sparta. There was another layer to this method that almost no one talks about, and it involves something called controlled exposure. The Spartans did not shelter their young men from temptation. They exposed them to it, deliberately, and then trained them to walk past it without flinching. There are accounts of Spartan training where young men were placed in situations specifically designed to test their self-control, not to trap them, but to build what we today would call psychological resilience. The ability to be in the presence of temptation and feel it fully, acknowledge it, and choose differently. Because here's what the Spartans understood about willpower that most people still get wrong. Willpower is not a wall you build around yourself to keep temptation out. Willpower is a muscle that grows only when it is tested. A man who has never faced desire and chosen differently has not built discipline. He has simply never been challenged. The Spartans challenged their warriors constantly, and in doing so, they created men whose self-mastery was not fragile. It was battle-tested. But what happened next in Spartan history reveals something even more striking. As Sparta began to interact more with the outside world, as wealth crept in, as foreign luxuries became available, something began to change. The same city that had produced the greatest warriors the ancient world had ever seen slowly began to soften. Desire, once redirected and controlled, began to find its way back in. And Sparta gradually declined, not because of outside enemies, but because of the one enemy the system had always been designed to fight, the one within. So what does any of this mean for you, sitting here in the 21st century? It means the battle is not new. It has never been new. Every generation of men has faced the war between their highest self and their weakest impulses. The only thing that changes is the battlefield. Today, the battlefield is a screen in your pocket, an algorithm designed by brilliant engineers to exploit every weakness the Spartans spent centuries trying to eliminate. But the method still works, not because history is a museum, but because human nature hasn't changed. Fill your time with something worthy. Build an identity that is bigger than your impulses. And learn to face temptation, not run from it, so that when it comes, and it will always come, you are ready. The Spartans knew something simple and timeless. A man who cannot master himself cannot master anything else. The question is, what will you do with that knowledge? If this video made you think, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Epic Stories if you haven't already, because we are just getting started. And drop a comment below. I want to know, what's the hardest battle you fight with discipline in today's world? I'll see you in the next one.